All right, we need to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. Present are council members Floyd, Frazier, Cost, Bub, and Marmee. First item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $5,300.
This is a payout for a Newark firefighter that left service to take employment elsewhere.
Motion by Floyd, second by Bub. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $89,800.
This is the disappropriation for the chiller that we discussed previously.
Motion. Second.
Okay, wait a minute. Yeah, this is the disappropriation first. So I have a motion by Bub, second by Frazier. Any discussion? Questions or discussion? Mr. Cost.
I've stated before, I have no argument appropriating the funds to replace this unit or to repair this unit. However, I cannot support taking these funds out of personnel. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just want to say, under normal circumstances, that would be my vote also. On the other hand, this money that's in personnel funds would swing back to the general fund in January, so I am supporting this.
Thank you.
Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. Now I'd entertain a motion for the appropriation of $89,800.
So move. Second.
Motion by Bub, second by Frazier. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a disappropriation in the amount of $75,588.
This is two different items. Number one, bulletproof vests are expiring in January of 2018. They will cost $52,325 of that $75,000. Typically, they're budgeted for specifically by themselves. However, we didn't have a trigger that told us in 16 that in January of 18 the vests were going to expire. It was an oversight, straight up oversight. I don't know where we would have cut to find $52,000 for them to begin with, but besides the point. The bulletproof vest grant will reimburse $21,000. We just got notified of that last week, I believe, from Barb Gilks. $21,000 and change will come back into the general fund. However, that will not be until 2018. The company will send us the vests as soon as they get a purchase order number. But to get a purchase order number, we will have to have the money there. If I didn't already mention, this is a contractual obligation with the FOP. The rest of the money, we have zeroed out the impound account, both for the impound clerk and for the tow companies. When I checked, we have done, as of October 23rd, we conducted 63 more impounds year to date this year than last year. Why did that happen? I don't know. I'm sure there are a multitude of reasons. We also had two rather significant impound fees in the amount of several $1,000s from a vehicle that was driven up onto railroad tracks that we had to have two different tow trucks extract. Also another vehicle that was well off the road and had to be winched several hundred feet to get it back onto the road, to get it loaded up. To try and avoid some of this next year, the chief and I had already met before we found out that we'd zeroed out the impound account to try and examine what we're towing and when we're towing it. Towing Monday through Friday for 48-hour impounds. We're not talking about OVI stuff or crashes. That you have no control over. But some of the stuff we can control, to maybe tow it, to give some thought to the tow fee for towing it during normal business hours rather than nights, weekends, holidays, things like that. So the police department's taken steps to try and curtail some of the costs, but an additional 63 impounds this year over last year, there's going to be additional costs. So unfortunately, we ran out of money in the fund.
Very good. Any questions or discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
For the bulletproof vests,
Yes,
are they good for 2 years?
5 years.
5 years?
5 years, sir.
And so-
And what I'll say is we had a new chief and several new command staff members during that 5 years. So
And so this isn't 100% of our vests that we're purchasing with this. It's just going to be a subsection, and then we'll have this again in a couple years, or?
if it's not 100%, it's pretty close.
Okay.
We've hired 8 people this year. Those people vests have all been purchased for those people that are eligible for the reimbursement. However, their vests will expire up to a year prior to the bulk of the vests.
Okay.
Any further questions or discussion? Yes, Mr. Rath.
I'm sorry, Director, how many people did you say you hired this year?
I want to say 8.
8? Okay, thanks.
I would entertain a motion.
Motion. Second.
Motion by Frazier, second by Bub. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the same amount, and entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion by Floyd, second by Frazier. Further questions or discussion for the appropriation of the same amount? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Director.
Thanks.
Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $889.29.
There was a job description change for Becky Moffett, and we're short in the wages, PRS, Medicare, and workers' comp. So we're taking incentive money and putting it over into those accounts.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Bub, second by Floyd. Further questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the appropriation of the same amount.
Motion.
Motion by Floyd, second by Bub. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 5-0. We still have another one. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $6,734.50.
We had shortages in 2 of our grants due to health insurance increases, 3 pays in June of 2017. Stephen, one of our officers, changed his insurance from single to family, and then there was a 1.75% raise for all employees in the calendar year. So we're taking incentive money to cover those shortages in the grant accounts.
Okay.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Frazier, second by Floyd. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, that motion passes 5-0. And once again, a disappropriation for another scram unit.
This was back money from 2011 that I was able to collect from someone in order to clear a warrant in his name, so he coughed up the money.
Motion. Second.
Motion by Bub, second by Frazier. You know we get a kick out of those. You know that. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, that motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $39,722.22, Water Department Fund. Can we help you with your memory? All right, let me get to this. It's interest.
Oh,
Higher interest on renewed note.
I didn't think that made this meeting. I thought this was next time.
It made this meeting.
All right, so this is just interest on a bond. We had money, the interest went from 1.5% to 2%, and we didn't realize that. So this is on the downtown project. It's not a bond, it's a note. So the interest changes from year to year.
Right.
And so this is where we failed to budget because we didn't know it went to 2%. And so this is the difference. So
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Floyd, second by Frazier. Any questions or discussion? And even though it made this agenda, you had still have to come back in 2 weeks.
okay.
I'm sure you'll probably
I'll be
have
here
another
anyway,
item. Yeah. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion passes 5-0. Next on the agenda is a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to negotiate a contract with the Wexford Lodging Advisors with regards to the partial abatement of hotel lodging excise tax revenue generated pursuant to Chapter 892 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Newark, Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As all of you are aware, this has been a ongoing conversation amongst all of us on what the city's position would be on this, and Explorer Licking County's position would be on this. And I think we've come to a point, and Dan Motor and Nancy are here from Explorer Licking County. I think we've come to the point where we'd like to have the opportunity to negotiate an agreement with Wexford. And at the end of the negotiations, which Explorer Licking County would be in on, we'll bring it back to the Bed Tax Committee of the City of Newark, and Explorer Licking County will take it to their board too. Both entities would have to vote in favor in order for this to move forward.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Floyd, second by Cost. Questions or discussion?
I have one.
Yes.
Ms. Rhodes, what's the timetable associated with this that
Within the next 6 weeks.
within the next 6 weeks?
Yes.
Any other questions or discussion? The chair is just going to comment that I think this is a great opportunity for our community, not only Newark, but for the county. And moving forward, I think it would benefit a business that could generate a significant amount of revenue for this community, and also improve the current status of that business. I love when we can come up with win-win solutions, and I think in this case that's exactly what's we're trying to do, is come up with win-win. And from all indications of everything that I'm hearing, it could be a great victory for everyone. And so I'm anxious about this, and I'm really excited, and I think it's really something that's really good and I'm glad we could be in support of this and a proud part of this. So with that, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 5-0.
Thank you,
very
Mr. Chair. I just want to make two quick comments. I want to thank John Rosman for coming forward with Wexford Lodging to make an investment into our community. And I also want to thank Explorer-Lincoln County for being a partner with the city on this, because to be honest with you, without those two entities, this would not be coming about. And it's a good partnership.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, at the discretion of the chair, there's a late item. I'm allowing it to be discussed. We will not be able to vote on it because it did not make it in time for the agenda. However, if Councilperson Floyd and myself both agree, we could enact Rule 11 at the next council meeting if we see that it's warranted after the discussion here. So I'm going to allow it to be presented, and it is an appropriation in the amount of $30,966.61.
This is a payout for a fire scene. Essentially, we've talked about these before. The insurance check has to go into essentially an escrow account. Once the homeowner and insurance company, once the homeowner has met all their obligations with the insurance company and essentially all the boxes have been checked, we can then release a check to take care of the property. That's what this is. We have had, unfortunately, more scenes than we budgeted for this year. However, let me say that I wouldn't want to account for $250,000 of the potential city budget by overfunding this account. I would rather come to you as we need them and budget it slightly smaller and have you do an appropriation as we get insurance checks and then claims to pay out, if you understand where I'm going with that. So this is a $30,000 one. We're ready to write the check, but we have to put money into the account, or we've received money into the account, now we're ready to write the check. But we would need that money moved to the other account to appropriate it.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
I have one. So just to hear you right, this is insurance money that is in an escrow account that's ready to go to the insurance company, and we have to...
Correct. It's insurance money that's come in from an insurance company, money that's come in from an insurance company is going to go out to pay a claim.
My question is making sure that we abide by our timing and things. What's the purpose we really have to expedite this?
There's an individual involved here that I feel if you could see your way to expedite it, I'm sure they would be grateful. They would be able to move on with their life a little bit. We could get a property taken care of. The neighbors obviously are always concerned when there's a property left standing after a fire.
And that makes sense. I just want to always clarify, because we do that because in essence, and just to let everyone know, we want to also avoid, if we hold on to someone's money, we really, in a sense, could owe interest on that. So in something like this where we have to pay out and we know the money's due and we know we need to pay it, it does make sense to expedite these matters to make sure that we're not only doing the right thing, but legally we're not putting ourselves in a position where we could actually owe more. So, but I just like to usually always have that.
I don't mind explaining. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we will not be able to act upon this, but if Carol agrees, and next Monday's meeting, we will probably invoke Rule 11. I know I will be in support of that. But we won't be able to do anything on this evening. So, thank you very much.
And street committee's next.
And with that, this Finance Committee meeting stands adjourned. Next up is Street Committee.
Okay, I'll call this street committee to order. We're here, the committee members present are Ms. Hull, Mr. Blake, Mr. Raff, Mr. Mangus, Mr. Lang, Mr. Marmee, and myself. We're here to discuss ordinance 17-54, accepting the dedication to public use of the streets in Park Ridge subdivision, Phase 2, Section 1B. And Brian Moorhead is here to explain it.
Yes, thank you. The construction is complete on this phase of the Park Ridge subdivision, and the developer has asked that we move this plat along as quickly as possible. They would like to be able to sell some lots soon, and they have some contracts that they would like to take advantage of good interest rates before the end of the year here. So the plat is before you, and it's been reviewed and approved by Planning Commission, and we're asking that the legislation have the second reading waived and it be passed at the November 6th meeting in order to help out the sales of some of those lots. So any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Any questions from the committee? Any questions? Yeah, Mr. Rapp?
I know that in Park Trail subdivision across the street, we kind of let them get away with a few things that we don't do in other places in the city. Are we doing the same here? I guess what I'm particularly talking about is maybe trees in between the sidewalks and curbs, things along those lines. Are we going to be a little more stringent with them on this?
Those trees and park trails were planted by the homeowners association. Did not receive approval from the city when they did that, and we wouldn't have approved it if we would have known it back then. Probably a good percentage of those trees are going to need to be removed probably in the coming year or two. I would say they're growing out into the street, and it's to the point where garbage trucks, school buses, and so forth aren't having easy passage through there. So
there's also areas where they're disrupting sidewalk and curb.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. So if you're asking, are we going to police that more in this subdivision? I guess if a request came to us, we would review that. If somebody goes and plants something that we don't know about, we don't have the manpower personnel to go babysit every subdivision. So if we found out about it, we'd try to do something about it, though.
Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the audience? Jen Carnegie, come up to the microphone.
Jen Carnegie, 2584 Upland View Court. I would just like to ask that the clause to pass it without the second reading not pass. There are some issues over there. There's actually a homeowner that's involved in litigation, and when that excavation started happening, it wasn't done correctly, and there was some flooding of basements, some paper patios that were washed out, and when it rains over there, it looks like a mudslide down the roads. So I would just ask that we give people time to come and be able to speak and express their opinion.
Ryan, do you want to comment to that, or?
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Sorry. How does that relate to the approval for the roads to be approved for public use?
Just giving people time to come and say what they feel is going on, and if it's even appropriate to all of a sudden just sell off 20 lots and start digging, and then it'll look like a bigger mudslide.
So property owner rights, and that there's also laws in which, anything that they do as far as roadways have to be approved through the engineer, and part of that is that the runoff cannot be changed or altered, and so all of that has to be taken into consideration. Are you suggesting that our engineer's office would not do that to ensure that those things are not occurring?
All I'm suggesting is that I've talked to the homeowners out there, and me giving them 3 days notice to be able to get here after work was not sufficient, and so I'm just asking that we not waive the second reading. I'm asking you to not pass it at the 6th meeting.
Ken, you want to speak to that?
The comment about the erosion and so forth, the original erosion control plan on the Park Ridge subdivision here that was under construction earlier in the summer was not fully implemented. Soon after the construction started, the complaint started. We dealt with the developer. They basically revised their plan to handle the water that's coming down. Since I would say July, I don't know of any other issues that we've had, and but I do know I had heard that one of the property owners has litigation against Rockford Homes, the developer. That's not really anything that we're involved with, though. So the piece of legislation before you is to dedicate the street to public use, and they've met all the requirements for that as far as runoff and protecting the adjacent properties and so forth. We've reviewed their plan. It's been approved by us. However, it's an ongoing thing that the erosion control plan is kind of a living document. When if issues arise, they still need to go back and change things. So as they're digging basements and so forth, they'll have to deal with the topsoil and the issues that they encounter as it goes along. So it's not such that here's a plan, you didn't follow it. It's here's a plan, there's issues, you need to alter your plan and keep changing it as it goes along. So I guess that's about all I have to say on that.
Okay. So, what is the wish of the committee?
I'll make a motion to send this on to full council.
I'll second.
Motion by Marmee, second by Rath. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Okay, that ends this committee. Safety is next.
Good evening. We'll call the Safety Committee to order. Those present are Floyd, Lang, Blake, Rath, and myself, Frazier. On the agenda tonight is ordinance number 1755, enacting Chapter 850 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Newark to impose licensing requirements for medical marijuana facilities operating within the City of Newark. So to give context to this legislation, the state of Ohio has allowed for medical marijuana facilities to come forward. The City of Newark has decided not to impose a moratorium, and so that allows us to set the rules and the conditions in place in order for businesses to be informed and have a process in which they can do business. And so the biggest pieces that we see throughout the state is a specific requirement to allow for inspections to occur by both the Chamber of Commerce and the City of Newark. And that provision has been included in here to make sure that we're following state laws, that we make sure that what is being used is for medical treatment, and that everything is following the provisions in the city and the state to make sure that everybody's operating legally. The other piece of this is to allow for a licensing requirement and a $500 fee in order to make sure, A, that we're provided with the most up-to-date application information and the licensing requirements, as well as making sure that any changes in ownership or any changes in filing is communicated to by the city. And because of significant issues with staffing and additional overhead, put a lot of that onus on the individual dispensaries and the other retailers, and also the cultivators and the processors, in order to make sure that they're communicating to us and it's in their hands to communicate, and we have the enforcement arm as well. And so with that, I'll open up any questions or comments to this on the committee or in the audience. Hearing none, is there a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. White.
I actually do have I was curious, section 850.03. I guess if you could explain for me when it talks about the application following the Department of Commerce, and then the line it says, any, in addition to any other information required by the director, I'm just curious, what information would be required by the department, the State Department, and then what would be an example of something that would additionally be required by the safety director? Like, what would be something that would go on there?
And so the big thing was allowing the safety director to create the application to form that he works. And so maybe emergency contact information would be something additional, something like that, that would improve the response of safety forces and also remain transparency.
So what's required on the state? Do we know what's required on the state?
Yeah, the applications are out there, and so what you're looking at is a business plan, an emergency plan, a security plan, and so it's very comprehensive as far as transparency for how their business operates, what the security is, who are the individuals responsible, and so it's very long application with a lot of sections that really covers the full gamut for the state. And so we're requesting that application to us so that we're able to see what's in their application so that they're transparent with us, and also the safety director has the power to request additional information as required.
That's where I'm just trying to understand, if the state application is that comprehensive, I'm just trying to understand what additionally the safety director here would require. And let me just get more to my point is, what would be a reason at where an application comes in and the safety director were to deny that? I mean, what would be reasons for him to deny an application? So I guess I'm trying to understand where, how much flexibility are we giving just this one appointed official? So
yeah, and so there was trying to make sure that the power really is on the safety director in order to oversee the application process. However, the way that this is written, and the law director isn't here, so we might need him to clarify, but the way that I understand it is if they're following the Department of Commerce and they're following the licensing fee, that and there is an application available for them, that they should be allowed to do business here. And the safety director, if you have anything to interject as far as what you'd be looking for, any reason for denial, you can feel free to speak.
I did not consider that someone who has been approved by the state would be disallowed by local government. I would be interested more on the nature of, as Mr. Frazier said, contact information, first, second, and third chains of command, where if there's some sort of emergency, we can make sure that we've got someone to get a hold of. I would want a copy of the state application simply so that I didn't have to contact the state to find out some of the information that they'd plan on using. Think of them as a rather, maybe not licensing, but maybe a permit might be a better word to consider it. Okay. Does that make more sense?
I understand. Go ahead, Chairman. While you're here, Director Baum, there's later on in this piece of legislation we talk about in section 850.05. Let's talk about the renewal of the application or permit, as the term you just used. It's saying that it seems to me as though we're placing the responsibility on the owner to have some type of honor code that if they update anything at the state, then they also have to update your office. So, I mean, it seems like it's really, if they don't do it, then it's like, well, you would have no idea if they did it. I mean, I don't know if the state notifies local municipalities if someone in their area has done this, or I guess I'm trying to get to understand how that would actually functionally work. You know, if someone were to update something at the State Department of Commerce, does the Department of Commerce notify you? Or, I mean, the way this is written is that the owner is responsible to notify your office, but if they don't, then it's like, well.
What I could say to that is that if we're available to inspect them, I could almost assuredly, maybe not guarantee you, but I would have every intention to inspect them at least once during the year, the application period. Okay. That would include communication with the business owner on any changes that they might have made. certainly following any violations that we think we observe. And as far as a renewal period, if we would find any violations or personnel issues that we would have concerns about at that point, the initial permit, no, I couldn't ever see denying that or taking issue with that. But I could see down the road if they didn't follow the plan that was agreed to. And we all know that government is shrinking rather than getting bigger. If the state wasn't able to properly inspect all of these places, or maybe not in a timely manner, possibly our inspection would then be communicated to the state that we found what we believe to be violations and ask them for their interpretation, and that may affect follow-on permits.
And Jeremy, for the state of Ohio, there is a revocation piece where the state revokes a license and they're required to contact local law enforcement. So if there is enough violations or revocation of the permit on the state level, Director Baum and the police department would both be contacted.
Obviously, we hope that we would have a good relationship with this business owner, just like with any other business owner, and that would never have to happen, but we would like a mechanism in place in case it did ever need to happen.
Okay. And then that, Mr. Chair, and that leads into this last section of Section 1, where it says that we're allowing the Director of Public Safety, or through the law enforcement or police department probably, to do searches. So is that, I mean, do we have to still establish any probable cause to go into them, or is this clearly saying
Not
we
under
can go
implied
into?
consent.
Okay.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Not under implied consent, no.
Okay.
We wouldn't need to find a probable cause or a specific reason to go into the facility to do an inspection.
I just didn't hear your response.
Yes, sir.
And Director Baum, we currently have this for other institutions in the city today, this implied consent clause, specifically with skill games, isn't that?
With skill games and certain facilities, like a government facility, you don't necessarily have the expectation of not being searched or inspected yourself. Going into the courthouse, domestic relations, soon to be our city building, there's going to be implied consent in passing through a magnetometer and a metal detector.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions, comments, concerns?
I had one. Oh, I'm sorry.
You can go ahead.
Just one more. Was just where did the $500 figure come from? Is that comparing from other municipalities, or where did that come from?
Yeah, there's a debate on the best way to tax this. One way that Akron and Cleveland is doing is a 1% surtax. What we heard in the previous committees is that cost is passed on to the consumers. So we wanted to cover the cost for the administration of the file and the filing and the update, and $500 was just seemed like a fair figure for what that cost would actually be. If there's a better figure, a better amount, I'd be open to hear it, but it just seemed something that would streamline the process and treat everybody equally throughout all parts.
If you have a straight fee, like the $500 fee versus the 1% surtax, wouldn't that significantly cut down on administrative costs as well as man-hours and collecting and accounting?
Yeah, the accounting piece would probably be pretty difficult too for the 1%, but we just try to make a streamlined process that everybody could get behind and everybody could understand and use and encourage businesses here. Mr. Mangus.
Related to this $500 fee, my understanding the state charges the fee every 2 years. And in my discussions with Law Director Sasson, he expressed concerns to me about assigning any fee, because that could be equated by the medical marijuana businesses as a tax. And my concern is if we're doing this every year when the state's doing it every 2 years, I could see the business having a much stronger legal ground to call this a tax, which has to be approved by local voters because we're maxed out at our tax limit. Has this concern been addressed by the law director?
So you're allowed to tax this company. So the surtax that's going on is specifically for medical marijuana through facilities throughout the state of Ohio for local municipalities. So the state has given us the power to set the conditions in place, including charging a surtax for this business only. The other piece of that is the 1-year renewal period is in case there's any violations, that we're made aware of it quicker, and that we keep our books up to date every year, because by doing this, they have an obligation to keep us informed and keep us notified and communicate at least every year with us.
I guess I have a concern that we're listing it here as a fee, and you're saying the word tax. And as a municipality, I thought we had to have our taxes approved because of where we're at, tax-wise, with the...
So I never use the word tax. This is a licensing fee, permit fee. And so you were trying to ask me what other municipalities were doing?
No, I'm concerned about the $500.
So do you have any other questions, Mr. Mangus?
I just have a concern about the $500.
We appreciate that concern, sir. So is there any other comments or questions? Is there a motion?
Make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
No.
That will pass 3-2. With that, we'll stand adjourned. Up next should be Service Committee.
We'll call the Service Committee meeting to order. Those present are myself, Rath, Cost, Bub, Frazier, and Floyd. Up first and only, consider Resolution 17-80, authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service in the City of Newark, Ohio to execute a cooperative utility service agreement with the Village of Granville, Ohio. Mr. Loomis, you have the floor.
This is simply a resolution to authorize the service director to enter negotiations for a contract for a cooperative utility agreement with Granville. And simply what's happening here is there's a property on the west side of Newark that's in Granville. It's actually in the Village of Granville. That they're going to have a very hard time supplying sewer service to because of the location of the property, because where our utilities are at and where their utilities are at, it's very difficult for them to provide service to there. They would provide water service to this site, but not sewer service. We have had some initial discussions with the developer. The developer has come to us. It's not something we're going to the developer about. And the developer, myself, and some officials from the Village of Granville have sat down and met, and the Village of Granville seems like they're willing to do this. They want to help the developer out. They don't want to provide service there because of where it's at. We can do it there reasonably. Not at our cost. This is all developer cost. This is not something that's going to cost the city anything. We're just going to pick up some customers. But at this point in time, the developer doesn't want to go any farther with any of his development until he has the agreement that the village is okay with that and the city of Newark is okay with that. And so I'm not saying the Village of Granville is okay with it at this point in time, because they're going to be doing the same kind of thing, and then we're going to sit down and negotiate. So this is not to approve an agreement that's here. This is to approve negotiating and coming up with an agreement. And then that also is dependent on the Village of Granville agreeing as well. So all we're doing is trying to get this in place so that the developer can move forward with his plans. He does not want to, develop a whole set of plans and do all the work behind that without some agreement that yes, we're ready to provide service to that site. So,
what's the name of the road that this is on? I see Westwood coming off of there, but
it's Newark Granville Road.
Okay.
It's the land in between State Route 16 and Newark Granville Road, and I think the church, the Latter-day Saints, maybe is next to that there, in that area there. So.
Once we establish sewer service for this client, then we're going to be, is the development for housing or for commercial use?
Housing.
So then at that point in time, are we going to be invoicing these residents for sewer service?
Yep.
So they get
Well,
water bill for
we'll be sending we haven't negotiated the agreement yet, but more than likely in our discussion with Granville we would be sending the bill to Granville. They'd be paying us for that. So.
Granville says them for sewer and water at the same time.
Yeah, but that's all negotiated. That could be different. We have the similar agreements with the city of Heath. We have some properties that we serve that are actually in the city of Heath. The city of Heath has some things in the city of Newark that they serve. Some of the roads that are on the borders down there, Harris and Morgan, I think. We have some. So we have an agreement like that with them because these guys, because we didn't want to run two lines down and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So this would be somewhat similar, only this is just one property that is just it would be a bear to get services, or it would be very expensive for the developer to get services to Granville.
Okay. Fraser, you got a question?
Yeah, where is the water line currently in this map? I mean, is it over by like the Shell House here, or the Sanger House?
This would be for sewer service. So the water lines are on Newark Granville Road. We have actually an interconnect there with Granville. We actually have used that one time where our systems are connected together there. But the water service would be from Granville. The sewer service would be from the city of Newark. They'd have to extend the main a little short distance. The sewer main is on Newark Granville Road, just to the east of that location.
And does it stop at Westwood? Is that kind of
get about to Westwood, where it's at. Yeah.
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion by Bob, seconded by Floyd. Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor of passing this on to council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Loomis. And that concludes Service Committee. Up next will be Economic Development Committee.
Call this meeting of the Economic Development Committee to order. Members present are Mr. Rath, Mr. Cost, Mr. Lang, Mr. Fraser, and myself. We do have two pieces of legislation on our agenda this evening. The first is consider ordinance number 1752, amending Article 135, display signs and outdoor advertising of the zoning code of the City of Newark, Ohio, Thornwood. Who's speaking?
Thornwood Crossing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
My name's Mark Cox. I went to Kessler Sign Company, and we want to put a billboard on your new road. Did you guys get the pictures in the presentation from Mr. Kessler?
I did not.
Shows you where it is and the size and the type.
We have this map.
We did not.
You didn't?
We did not.
Is that something you can send to us?
You'd have to share it.
There you go.
All right.
Right here.
Here, I have an extra. That's the only extra I have.
Okay. What are you showing here?
This.
Well, why don't you, if you wouldn't mind, one of the microphone, and then we could show the picture around, and then you could talk about it. So.
All right. This is the eventually new road.
Yeah.
Before they can get it on the.
Okay.
And
We want to get your voice on the record, so if you could just speak from there.
oh, okay. Bear with me. That's the new road going through. The next phase of Thornwood Crossing, when they cross the bridge and shut off Cherry Valley Road. We're showing that because we have an existing billboard on Cherry Valley and Reddington that will be obsolete when that happens. And I think could be 4 years. Is that right, Brian? Yeah. Next picture is the site map that shows you where the proposed billboard goes. It would be 600 feet off the intersection of Cherry Valley and 700 feet off the off-ramp there at 16 and Thornwood Crossing. These are renderings of the billboard we want to put up. It'd be on the east side of the road. It'd be a north and southbound read. And this is just a picture of the billboard we're going to lose eventually, which you already seen the digital. they shut off that bridge, and it makes that intersection worthless and be obsolete. Other points about the new billboard proposed is, according to current code, as far as the 1,000-foot spacing, it'll be the only billboard allowed on that road between Cherry Valley Road and State Route 16.
Ms. Radford.
So if I could maybe address this a little bit, because I'm the one that asked to bring this forward. The billboard at Cherry Valley and Weddington Road, at some point when that becomes obsolete, is going to be removed. Is that correct?
I think it'd have to be. We don't know that for sure. I was supposed to look into the lease to see how long the lease with the landowners is good for.
Okay.
I mean, the landowner won't want it there if he's not making any revenue.
Sure, absolutely. The new location is going to be at the church that is located at the Reddington Valley, or the Reddington Road interchange. I believe the owner of that property is here with us as well. So this is a net block that we're losing one but gaining one. And there's already an arrangement with the Kessler Sign Company and the property owner where they've come to an agreement that if we say yes, this will pass. The roads, the area that we're talking about did not exist at the original time that the map was produced, so it wasn't even up for consideration. So I believe the process at this point in time is if we pass this, it goes to council on the 6th, and then we forward it on to Planning Commission where they review and come back to us with a recommendation. So
They come back to you for recommendation after you already...
And then we vote in full council to accept or not.
Okay. Do you have any more questions about it, or?
Mr. Lehman wants to make a comment.
Who?
Gentleman behind you.
He's here.
My name is Steve Lehman, 9 North 3rd Street, here to speak against this proposed legislation. For the new members on council, some context. About 10 years ago, Newark had a new zoning ordinance. It would have happened earlier, but the most contentious part of the new zoning ordinance was the sign ordinance, and was specifically the question of the billboards. There's a fair percentage of the community thinks that there's enough billboards already. The billboard companies obviously think there's always room for more. So it took about a year to work out the compromise on how to handle the growth or non-growth of billboards, and the overlay map was the compromise. That's what enabled us to finally get the new zoning ordinance passed. I think it was 2008. It was a tedious process, but I think a fair solution. I would say to you that we're not really talking about trading a billboard, because that sign went up in that time period when all this controversy over the billboards was taking place. Kessler took advantage of that time period to put up 4 signs. Okay, that was fine. I think that Thornwood Crossing is almost a new front door to Newark. I don't think it needs a billboard, and I hope that council will see fit to leave that just as a clean vista. I would agree with those people who think that Newark has enough billboards. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lehman. Sir, come on up. You could speak after him, but...
My name's Rusty Foley. I pastor Waters Edge Assembly of God, the property that's in question. And I appreciate what you folks do. I don't know why anybody would want to do it, but I'm glad somebody does. But the fact that a billboard should or should not be there isn't dependent on a few people's opinion or someone saying everybody feels this way. I think there needs to be a little bit more information than that if you're going to make a decision, yes or no, right now. My concern is, and I appreciate Mr. Lehman putting forth the effort that he did so many years ago, but it came forth pretty obviously that his problem is more with Mr. Kessler than with our sign. And so I don't want you making a decision on his concern for that, and also for the fact that he doesn't want any more signs in the area. And that's his prerogative, but that's his opinion. I could produce several people that would say they'd like the sign. So I just felt like that was important to say. And also, it would be a great blessing to the church, the income that would come from it. With the Thornwood Crossing going in, it did take away our access to the 10 acres on the other side that we still keep, because they didn't want to buy that. They just wanted to eminent domain 2 acres, leave 5 acres on the side that the church uses, 10 acres we can't use now. So that would be a help to us also, to at least make that a regrouping, bringing back of some of the value of that property for us.
Thank you, Pastor. Sir, did you want to make another comment?
Just real quick, this goes with that info that I think somebody thinks was emailed that puts that package together. I guess one thing I've learned about the billboard business, there's a lot of people have opinions. I heard somebody say, there are a lot of people don't want them, but there's a lot of people that do. The Midland Theater, the Works, OSU, COTC, so it's up to you boys. Any questions?
Mr. Rath.
As the councilman in that area, I will say that I have mixed emotions about this. I don't know that I'm particularly fond of billboards polluting the skies, but I understand their need and their use. I do appreciate the fact that we're losing a billboard at Reddington to Cherry Valley Road, which is a residence. I'm anxious to have you guys remove that. But nonetheless, I'd like to hear the opinion of the Planning Commission before I would make a yea or nay decision on this. So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to send this on to council so we can send it to the Planning Commission and hear their opinion.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mr. Frazier. Any other questions or comments from Mr. Frazier?
I want to concur with Mr. Rath. We'll let it go to Planning Commission, see what they state. Mr. Lehman, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming as well. And we look forward to seeing what the Planning Commission says on this and put that weight in it as well to make our final decision.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee?
Yes.
Mr. Cross.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that I can support this as far as a council vote. But I think this is one of those things that the full council should see. The full council should have the opportunity to discuss and vote on, so that we're all involved in this vote. I'm not a proponent of many more billboards either, and I know over the years there's been a lot of controversy over adding additional billboards. I know that was a real sore spot the last time around on some of the legislation that went through on signage. So I know that's been challenged and lots of points of view on that. So I would like to see this go to full council and see it be discussed, go to the Planning Commission, and let's see what we come up with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Mr. Moorhead.
I just wanted to say a couple words on this. If you remember back whenever we got into the agreement with ODOT to actually build the Thornwood Crossing interchange, the city has put about $500,000 into that project, and a good portion of that $500,000 goes to the aesthetic upgrades that we did to that corridor. There's form liner patterned concrete on the bridge, there's decorative railing, decorative fencing, decorative lights, the bike path that's along there, decorative lighting along the bike path. So all those things were to create a upgraded kind of corridor there. So put that in your thinking as you're thinking about this. We've paid a lot of money to upgrade that corridor, and personally, I don't think a billboard is the right thing to be putting out there. But just wanted to put that into the comments, because we have the city has already invested a lot of money out in that area to upgrade the look of that entrance coming into the city.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any other comments from the committee or from the audience? Yes.
I just wondered if anybody...
Come on up, Jen.
So I just wondered if anybody had contacted Granville, because I know that was kind of like a joint project right there, and they're still trying to raise money to plant the trees and to make that kind of real parky right there. So I just wondered if Granville had been...
I can't answer that question, so, but I don't know if Mr. Moorhead can or not. But
I don't know.
It's something to consider. Thank you for the point. Any other comments from the committee or from the audience? Mr. Moorhead.
Yeah, I just, my comment is to make sure that we don't just focus on your opinion of liking or disliking a billboard. We still always have to act on the best interest as far as a landowner and what is a property owner's rights. And if it fits within the plan of the city that, you know, a business of any kind, which a billboard is a business, fits into a particular area, we are on a slippery slope with the Ohio Revised Code if we don't allow property owner rights to be allowed because we dislike the type of business. That would be just like saying that I don't like the shoe business, but I do want business there, but I don't want shoes there. And I'm using that as an example because I know shoes are something that everybody likes. I should have used cookies maybe, right? But I think I'm trying to get my point that we have to always keep in mind property owner rights and what is their actual right to do business in the city of Newark. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I'll just quickly say that I'm going to agree with the comments that I think this is something worthy that the Planning Commission can discuss, and then we'll council will get their recommendation off of it. Any other comments from the committee or the audience? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of sending this on, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. We do have a second piece of legislation on our agenda. This is ordinance number 1754, amending Article 135, display signs and outdoor advertising of the zoning code of the city of Newark, Ohio. This one is Mount Vernon Road.
Jeremy, I've got that at 1753.
Oh, okay. Autumn put 54. Just for the record, Autumn, as you're listening, you know, it says 54 on my paper. Okay. All right, 53. But this is the Mount Vernon piece. Is there someone to speak on this piece? Mr. Rath?
I brought this one forward as well, both of them for the same reason. We have people that want billboards there. We have arrangements that have been made. The question was, can we put them there or not? It's not like I have any skin in the game whether they go there or not, but there's businesses that are trying to exist, as Mr. Marmee would say, and we just have simply not given them an answer. So that's why I brought this forward is for consideration, and again, I'd be interested in hearing the opinion of the Planning Commission.
Mrs. Floyd.
We're on Mount Vernon Road.
It's at the very north end.
Far north end. It's the far north end of the city.
Yeah,
and
it's that blue strip
where. Somebody help me. It's where
Okay.
What were you saying, Ms. Martin?
North of the Village of Glen Ridge subdivision.
Okay. The old, what used to be there, or what is there?
It's by the old Dry Creek.
It is, that's it. I was trying to remember, and I apologize, but let me feel be there for a minute.
Any comments, questions from Mr.
So
Lang?
it looks like, it currently would be allowed on the other side of the street. We're just allowing it on the west side of Mount Vernon there, right? Just looking at the map from where.
It is.
The green line, yep.
Okay.
So with that, I'll make a motion to send it on to council so that we can get it to planning commission.
Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mr. Frazier, and question Mr. Cost.
Brian, if I could ask, on the other piece of legislation, I think the point that was brought out was that road didn't exist at that time. So it's a brand new location with a brand new, idea. This is on a road that's been there since the beginning of time, and we're just asking to add an additional billboard to an area that's already been there, got billboards. I mean, to me, this was like two very different things.
I agree with you. So the map dictates, which was passed by council along with the zoning code back in 2008, the map dictates where the billboards can be, and the map does not allow the billboards in either of these locations. So, you can get into a lot of discussion of property owners' rights and so forth, but I think you need to be an attorney to do that. So the map does not permit it currently in either of those locations. So you're correct. The Thornwood Crossing one, there was no roadway there, so consequently there's no signs permitted there. The Mount Vernon Road one, the road is there. The billboard's permitted on the east side of the road, but not on the west side. So this is to allow it on the west side of the road in that case.
Mr. Marmon.
Yeah. Just comment, property up on Mount Vernon Road was not in the city of Newark when the map was developed. So if the map would have been developed, it was annexed in after the map was developed. So it was not added on when it was annexed into the city. It was something that wasn't even, I don't know if it wasn't considered or anything, but this person found out that they couldn't because it was annexed in and the maps were drawn up before it was annexed in. So just a little clarification. It could have possibly been in the map if it would have been in the city at that time because, like you said, it's right across the street. It's in the mapping zone.
Yeah, so I guess then, if it had been in the city, I mean, they would have been too close. Will the signs be too close together based on
that whole corridor is part of the map? Is part of it. It's allowing it.
I thought weren't we on issues as far as the distance between them? I thought that was a big point of contention. I was pre-me, so I don't know. But,
If I'm correct, whether there's a billboard allowed in that district or not is not going to affect the distance regulation still.
Right.
So if there is another billboard within 1,000 feet, then it would be a moot point, but I don't believe there is at that point.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the committee or the audience? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of moving this on, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. That concludes the business of economic development. Up next is rules.
Okay, I will go ahead and call this Rules Committee to order at 6:46. Present are Mr. Lang, Mr. Marmee, and myself, Mr. Mangus. And we are here tonight to discuss ordinance number 1756, appointing a charter review study group pursuant to Charter Article 11.05 for the limited purpose of considering modifications to the current form of city government. It's my understanding that this legislation is being brought by Councilwoman Floyd, and so I will turn it over to her.
I brought this up because the last two charter committees that I have attended some of the sessions of, they have discussed nonpartisan elections in the city of Newark, and there's some people who are in favor of nonpartisan, there are people who are opposed to it. I think one of the biggest issues is people don't really know enough. I know this last Charter Commission, they felt that there wasn't enough time. Charter Commission meets for what, 2 months? And so this legislation would give people 6 months. The people would be chosen basically the same way the Charter Commission members were chosen. They would be run through the President of Council, and would come up with 5 names, and those people would have the time to look at what other cities do. And see, I have tended to favor a nonpartisan form of government for the city of Newark, but I know it would change a lot of what we do. We couldn't do Rule 11. Committees would not be set up the way they are now. I mean, there'd have to be, because all of that's based on political party, and that would have to change. And so, I mean, I could see the charter study group, which might meet and go through this whole thing to see about changing to nonpartisan and say, it won't work for Newark. It works, there are some communities, Granville has it, Heath has it, a number of communities have nonpartisan government, so there's not as much political party involvement in terms of what goes on within the city. But I brought it up because I think it's important that a group, and I know there was at least one person in this last charter committee that said they would be willing to meet to actually dig into it a little bit and study it. Since it's brought up every time, it would seem to me that if there's a study group that really studies it, because anything that would be done, if the study group would come back and say, yes, that's the way we want to go, then it would have to go through council. Council would make the final decision, and then it would be up to us as a council to make that decision. But it's just something that I think, because it's been brought up the last 2 times the Charter Commission has met, I thought it might be a good idea for us to give a group a chance to look at it and to try to decide what might work for the city of Newark. And maybe it would change nothing. Maybe we'd end up with exactly, what we have now. I would just like this to pass on to full council, so at least council has a chance as a group to vote on it. Thank you.
Does any of the committee members have any comments or questions for Mrs. Floyd?
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Marmee?
I guess, you mentioned that they would study this and then basically come up with alternatives.
They could decide to do nothing,
Okay, but Section 2 says that they shall have no authority to recommend alterations, revisions, or amendments to be adopted by council or submit any recommended alterations, revisions, or amendments to the electors directly or through council action.
Well, I think they're studying it to say, that maybe it would be something the next charter committee would, look at and have some information on. So, I understand what you're saying.
I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah.
I just think I want to know this. What's the scope?
What's the scope of it? Yeah.
And what are we actually trying to? I think no one's in disagreement with having any kind of a study group. We've done it with the trash haulers. We've done it, and we didn't
with
need legislation to do it.
Yeah.
But it's a group that's gotten together. And I don't even mind formalizing it, but I think we need to give, if this is the scope, then we're going to have to abide by this scope.
Okay, yeah,
So,
I understand. Mr. Ellington?
That language that you just read is in the chart, that's how the charter states a review committee is.
Right, and that was my next question is this anything in addition to what we already have in our charter? Is this more or less a resolution of support or an ordinance of support, or is it, and I'm all for it, I just know that.
I guess for me, it's just an idea that we should have a group that takes the time to actually study things. I know I was on the property maintenance committee that met for months, and I know people were on the trash talkers that went on forever and ever, and nothing really changed as a result of that, but you have a chance to gain some information that could be combined and could possibly be used by possibly a next charter commission, So I just think it's something that might be valuable to do. So
I agree, and I'm not disagreeing with you at all.
Okay.
I'm just trying to make sure that we're clear on the scope
I understand.
when they do meet. Okay?
I understand.
That's what I'm trying to make sure of.
Okay.
So, I will make a motion to send this to full council.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any additional comments from the committee or from the audience? I believe Mr. Crawford would like to say something.
Daniel Crawford, 163 South 2nd Street. I think it may have been my fault that there was at least the impression I could make recommendations. During the Charter Commission meetings, I'd even read the language saying it would not have the power to do that. And it's just in my passion of promoting nonpartisan elections, was like, make a recommendation. But at least this information could be there for the next commission, even if whether it's an ad hoc commission just created for the purpose of pursuing nonpartisan elections, or just the next one 5 years from now. So that way you don't have the excuse anymore that we haven't had enough time to research this. We could say that we've had a study group for 6 months that looked into this in depth, and here's their findings. So I appreciate the motion in a second, and I'll shut up now. So thank you.
Any additional comments before we move on for a vote? In that case, I would like to make one comment regarding something Mrs. Floyd said. She mentioned that at least one person on the Charter Review Commission had asked for the special committee to be created. I attended most of those meetings, and it was at least 3 of the people involved asked for this committee, and I'm looking forward to this moving on to full council. In that case, all in favor of sending this ordinance on to full council, please signal with an aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0, and with that, the Rules Committee is adjourned. I believe that's the last committee this evening.